History is important, but it's often ignored in land use planning. In this episode of the Conservation Hackers blog, I talk to Dr. Jorge Álvarez-Romero. He talks about using historical information on land use change to inform their spatial plans for where different industries and conservation can be in the future. And he also talks about the importance of getting organised in really complex spatial conservation projects. I'm Dr. Chris Brown. I hope you enjoy this episode.
We did a really cool project recently about planning for land and water development in the north, in the Kimberley region, which is a quite unique area for cultural and natural reasons. So it's one of the largest wild rivers with a lot of cultural value for local traditional owners. And so one of the interesting exercises that we did was to explore what has happened in the past to see what could happen in the future. And so to do that, we use this interesting tool, which is called Esri Story Maps, to map on the catchment or the river basin, depending on what terminology you want to use. But we were trying to identify what changes have happened in the catchment that have changed the way that things are today and the way that people live today, and how that could influence the future. So one of the things that was really interesting was to map how in different parts of the catchment there were, for example, the introduction of cattle or the introduction of sheep, and how that changed the land use and the land condition, and potentially affected, for example, some of the things like the water quality of the river. But then we did also some interesting, more quantitative analysis, for example, to identify today based on fire frequency, so how frequent the fires are in the region and how strong they are in terms of intensity. And see which areas you need to control fire in a way that will allow you to essentially get less smoke into the air, and so have less not in terms of pollution, but in terms of carbon. And so which areas are good for managing the fires to get good outcomes for reducing risk for people, but at the same time reducing risk for cattle, which is the main industry in the catchment, and to protect the biodiversity, so the plants and the animals of the
Do you think the mapping has helped management?
It was more about the challenges of mapping where things could go into the future that was a bit more difficult. And obviously we couldn't go into the details of, for example, things like where could future mining go, because we didn't have the information to model that. But based on some good work from other researchers on agriculture suitability and water availability, we could map areas that could become better for example, for cropping. And so these were part of these different future scenarios that we talk with people in terms of so what are all these plans about agricultural development that people are talking about. And so when people see it in a map, and the maps are reflecting like all this quantitative work behind that says not only where someone draws a line, but also where all the spatial data and all the models say that the cropping could go here, but maybe not around here, then I think that people started to see more the value of these models and how that could actually influence their own decisions.
So it's not as if they go and do what's in the models, but it got them talking about the issues. Hey there, just time for a quick break, and a reminder to leave a comment to let me know what topics you'd like to hear more about in the future. Now let's hear more from Jorge. And if you're talking to an early career scientist who's just starting to dabble in learning more coding or like quantitative skills, what would your be advice to them to learn those skills?
Well, I mean, it's a hard question, but I think that, I mean, for me, having skills in spatial analysis and modeling was really good, because it allowed me to understand more information it allowed me to access information, use information, and then communicate this information to planners and managers. I mean, personally, I think the other thing is some of these skills are transferable to other areas, right? So the skills that I had or that I further developed doing, for example, this project that I talked about, can be useful in other things, right? So even if I continue in academia, I would be very good for supporting other projects. But if I wanted to eventually to move into like working with NGOs or with government, so these sort of skills are really good for, and is what people are also after in terms of supporting, because I mean, everyone's all about more about evidence and science-based decisions.
And final question, like
Yeah.
in your research, you're known for having like great attention to detail and really putting a lot of thought into these cross-realm models that go from land to sea. So like, how do you just keep it all in your head? I've always wondered that.
Well, I've tried to be very well organized with my files and things. But through time, I've also learned that sometimes getting too much into the details may not be a great idea. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, keep things good, real good quality, but sometimes, just step back, always step back and see what's the ultimate goal, what's the end game, and what your models, if gaining that much level of detail is going to change the results or not, right? So obviously keeping the good quality.
Thanks, Jorge.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share the vlogs with friends and family and colleagues. It's the number one way we can spread the word about the vlog. Please give us a thumbs up or feel free to leave a comment about future episodes you'd like to hear. I've been Dr. Chris Brown and this is the Conservation Hackers vlog.